connective tissue between Summer of Soul and this film. You mentioned the 1969, you mentioned the year of 1969 where SLY does Woodstock, does the Harlem Cultural Festival, and I believe when you were making Summer of Soul, you interviewed SLY in 2020. So, Joseph, when you guys were going to interview him, did you already know you wanted to make a movie about him, and what was his condition at the time?
Yeah, that's interesting. We interviewed him for Summer of Soul, but it was pandemic, so we did it remotely, and it just...
He had Zoom?
And it just didn't feel right. So we never included it in the film. But no, we didn't know we were making SLY at the time.
Yeah, actually, I guess the genesis of it was we were editing SLY into the movie. And at the time, in the editing bay over at Radical, it's me, Joseph, and Joshua Pearson, our editor. And I was like, wow, man, like, kind of wasn't Jacob Marley Christmas story shit, like, this is 10 days before Woodstock, which in my mind is kind of the tipping point. That's the paradigm shift for SLY. And I was like, wow, man, like, I want to know what happened to him right after Woodstock that brought on what I grew up with. Like I was born like post-riot, so I got to experience, of course, in retrospect, and then you do all the research and whatnot, you know the history, but probably more than like 48 hours later, Common, of all people, randomly calls me. It's like, hey man, I heard y'all doing that Black Woodstock film, and I don't know, but do you know we have a Life Rights to SLY Stone? Would y'all be into it, man? I was like, wait, we literally were talking about this like 2 days ago, so it's kind of serendipitous how it fell into our lap.
So it happened like that. In the movie, you talk about how success for a black artist can be more challenging than failure. And Joseph, you recently did this interview where you said, after winning the Oscar for Summer of Soul, I could tell that Quest had enormous feelings of guilt. Just from my observation, he was going through it as well. So I want to start to give context to where you two were at going into this. Is that a fair assessment of you at the time after that? After you won the Oscar?
Absolutely. Like there's no worse feeling than
winning?
Knowing that being dead serious. Like, and unless, like, of course it's easy if it's not happening to you, you know, from an outsider's point of view, you'd be like, well, whatever, like that. But like sort of given a lifetime pass, a gold pass, a golden ticket in the face of dire times, or you know, what Dream said about you being separated. I will tell you that my mind frame, because of my creative life as a musician, being in the passenger seat next to many a well-known saboteur, was definitely on my mind. I mean, I'm thinking of, name it, Frank Ocean, D'Angelo, Lauren, Dave, Kanye now, you know what I mean? Like, but it's all of us. It's all of us. I mean, that night, Will Smith, Chris Rock.
What happened?
So it was I don't know if you heard, but yeah, it definitely affected me. I think my mom, it's so weird, my mom, I think 3 weeks ago, was like, I don't want to say nothing, but I think you made this film for yourself. As a way of coping, but she's 100% right. Like,
and this is something Ahmir has talked about. As a concept, even before we started SLY, even before we knew we were making SLY, I've heard him talk about this idea that why do people self-sabotage? Why do artists self-sabotage? And that sabotage happens in these familiar ways, showing up late, not showing I've heard him talk about it before. I didn't make the SLY connection until we sat down to work on the movie for the first time. We talked about what kind of film we wanted to make.
Even my version of the coping mechanism, you know, I mean, obviously, Captain Obvious is food is an easy one. But me overworking, like people knowing, like, oh, you have 17 jobs, and you know, first I used to see that as a thing of pride, but you know, people choose different methods. They shoot it up, snort it up, pop it up, drink it up, abuse it up.
Make documentaries for Hulu.
Exactly. So yeah, I pretty much was going through the same, not as dire pathway, but I think all of us go through that.
So once the two of you are in the thick of it, I'm curious, music-wise, what was both of your relationships to SLY's music before, and how did it change once you immersed yourselves in the work?
I wasn't as obsessed with SLY. I mean, SLY was not as formative on me as it was for Ahmir. I was more of a P-Funk guy. I knew SLY's hits, I knew the songs, I knew some of the albums, but I didn't know the story. I didn't know the contours of the story. And Ahmir did. He was very fluent in it. So I think the first 6 months of pre-production was me just trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Right? Listen to everything in order, read everything I could. And I actually think that helps because also with Josh, our editor, it's 3 different perspectives where we can triangulate one voice for the film. Right? And that was sort of our technique on Summer of Souls. We could have gotten really nerdy in Summer of Soul, right? Especially if there's some of the things with music, but we sacrificed them for the bigger story, right? And so I think not having as deep a perspective or as deep an impact that SLY made on me, I think it's helpful to how we sort of think about the story.
My first memory in life is Sly Stone. So,
can you share that?
Yeah, well, you know, most people tend to not want a soundtrack if a tragedy's happening, like a car accident or getting pulled over. Like, no one wants to get their ass beat to a soundtrack. So, I was
Depends on the song, maybe.
right. No. I was 2 years old getting my hair washed by my mother and sister, and there's no instructions to, like, no one's telling this 2-year-old, don't open your eyes or else the soap's going to get in. Something happens as I'm getting my hair washed, and I think my sister's hand accidentally hit the cleanser that fell into the tub. I open my eyes, hearing splat. You know, I got Comet cleanser and soap in my eyes, so it's pretty much like someone's gouged my eyes out. And all I remember, like my first memory of life in my childhood home is being pinned down on the floor while my aunt, sister, and mom, and dad, 4 people to try to flush my eye out. But just like a baby is playing on boom, 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 and all the scary. And I guess
Thank God you have the sound effects for that.
Right. And so, you know, maybe like cut to when I'm 11, I hear that song again, and it instantly like triggered me. Like I know, you know, and I connected it to that moment, and I became obsessed with the Riot album. But then when I would read critics' reviews of it, and they're just fetishizing, salivating over this like masterpiece of it. I mean, I did my research to realize, okay, this is the very first funk record, but everyone's perspective on Riot is like, yo, man, it's this funk masterpiece, and I don't know, it's just always connected it to a person in pain that we're not helping, like going past a car crash, and you know. But I think oftentimes we don't look at the blues or funk or gospel as Black people in pain having a cathartic release, because you know our pain is a beautiful thing to watch sometimes, which is unfortunate. But for me, I've always just had a very, very different relationship with, there's a riot going on in the rest of the world, but I think it's because it's my first experience of a memory on Earth.
I think that's probably part of it, but also you described it as 41 of the most painful documented minutes, 41 of the most painful documented minutes in a creator's life.
That's how I hear it. Like, I can't listen to Space Cowboy or Time or any of those songs. Like 3 minutes into Love and Hate, the first song on side one. Like whenever, like, okay, let me listen to it again to see if I feel different about it now. Whenever I get to that 3 minute mark, it's almost like he's going, like, the person that released those 5 records before is not the same person on this record. So
when you hear that record now, and Joseph, as someone who didn't have the shampoo incident in H2, where does that piece land? Because you're right, critically, people, did not hold it in high regard. Now it's considered a masterpiece.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting to look back at why that record. I mean, just even what we included in the film, where the critics' language and the liberties they took with the language they used reviewing that album, right? Pimp's wisdom, game leader looks. It's like the audacity that some of those white critics had in how they talked about that album, and then what that must have done to Sly as a musician. Even though he's in a very vulnerable, unstable point in his career, right? Like what that must have done to him and his path forward. I think that's kind of what we were looking to how to examine it in this film. Yeah.
Speaking of audacity, the Dick Cavett interview.
I thought you were going to talk about the Maria Shriver question.
I was, but people sometimes ask, like, what inspired Talk Easy? And I often say Dick Cavett, and now I can never say that again. Because I already handled that, but I want to talk about so much of Sly's story is informed by how other people are telling it, and how badly they're telling it. People who do not have his best interest at heart. That interview, I was told that there was another scene with Cavett that was cut. And I thought maybe you could share that. It seems pretty reflective of how the American media covered him.
Well, there are 2 separate Cavett interviews. I guess you would say that the second one was just as crazier than the one that we got to see.
Which is a different type.
We definitely made a conscious decision to not pile on, because people, when you tend to think of Sly, it's always a tragic story. And, we're trying to tell the story of a human being here, because oftentimes artists aren't seen as human beings. You're seen as a very lucky lottery ticket recipient, and so this could have easily wound up being a 3 to 5 hour documentary if we wanted it to be, but pretty much it's more the same, just intense.
This is, you said in one interview that this is not a story of Sly Stone. This is a story of anyone I've ever worked with. The people you bring into it do feel like proxies for him. And this is a tough thing to talk about, but the first person you cut to is D'Angelo. And it is impossible to watch this and to not bring our own relationship to his music, what we know he has gone through, what we know you two have gone together. You said at some point you realized that I was creating a loving ambush. And at times it feels like something close to an intervention. At what point did he realize what you were doing?
I will say, we didn't get to D'Angelo first. He's the first one you see. D'Angelo took a year to get. And the night of, it took 8 hours. He was 8 hours late.
In the movie. Oh.
Yeah, he is the first person you see.
Yes.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Was that punishment for showing up 8 hours late?
No, but I'll answer this from a broader perspective, and then I think Ahmir could do it from a personal perspective. But I think, we couldn't to interview Sly for the film, so to some extent we wanted to use these other artists who have been through similar experiences as proxies. That's exactly correct, right? But you know, if you don't know who D'Angelo is or who Vernon Reid is and their significance, what they say still is insightful and informative. But if you do know, it adds this other layer to it, right? If you do know that D'Angelo was thrust up as the next Marvin Gaye after one album, right? Or he, on the Voodoo tour, this man sat next to him the entire tour and saw how difficult it was for D'Angelo to make it on the stage every night, to take off his shirt, be in perfect physical condition, and do how does it feel, right? Or in even the Dick Cavett interview, Vernon Reid narrates that scene for a reason, because Vernon Reid, as a black guitarist, has been on that couch being interrogated by a white talk show host about his bona fides. And so everyone in the film, as a proxy for Sly, is there for a very specific reason. The D'Angelo parallels, you know, is the result of Ahmir's relationship.
Yeah, I think maybe, 10, 20 seconds of that interview, he definitely knew he wasn't there just to talk about harmony structure. There's a point where he put his glasses on, for that one scene.
Right.
It was clearly an uncomfortable thing, but I think also he knows I have his best interest in art. And the thing is, he is in a way, way, way much better place in his life now than he was then. But, I got to witness that firsthand, just in my, 20, 30-year association with him. And, he knows the language, he knows the lay of the land. And, just took a little coaxing to get him to be vulnerable. But really, it's like we put out feelers to at least 20 people. And that was probably the hardest part of putting this whole thing together.
Got a lot of notes.
Got a lot of no's, got stood up a lot. It's different when you're stood up for a movie as opposed to, like, I've done studio sessions for music and it's just like, all right, well, we'll record it next week or whatever, but,
Who stood you up? Who was the most heartbreaking?
Okay, think of the person that you like, I wonder what their perspective was, and then be like, yes, we literally asked every human being.
I heard Dave Chappelle's coming on stage, is that happening?
No, we literally asked every figure. And again, being vulnerable is one of the hardest things to do. And hopefully, with these projects that we're doing, people see that our aim is true. I'll say that at least 3 of them, after seeing the film, was sort of like, oh, okay, I didn't know it was that.
I didn't know you would care about me as a human being.
Because there's no history ever of that happening. There's no history ever of artists being treated like human beings, being asked, even with the actual Family Stone members, they were like, wait a minute, is this therapy? I keep asking how I feel. But oftentimes human beings aren't asked, especially black creators aren't asked, how do they feel?
I think after you came on Talkies the first time, you asked me the same question. Is this therapy? And how much money do I owe you?
I just want to add something real quick to that, which is there's like 2 artists that canceled day of, or day of or night before.
Okay.
Right? And
is there an age range you can give?
No. But
You know them.
As the producer, I was really upset because I'm like, okay, we've already booked the location, we booked the crew, we're taking care of your hotel for the night.
Is one of them previously married to Andre 3000?
Anyway, so
as a producer, I'm really upset because it's a documentary budget, it's growing money, and I call him here, and he's like, I get it, right? I get it. And I mean, probably not a reaction we would have had, or you would have had like 10 years ago. Which to me just shows Ahmir's own growth, but also really kind of the intent of the movie was as not only a story about Sly Stone and Sly and the Family Stone, but really sort of this bigger idea for other artists, right? I think that's the first thing he said.
And yeah, the intent of the movie for me is, yeah, okay, it is Karasone's portmanteau, edutainment, right? Entertainment, education. I mean, it's a balance of both, but for me, the balance of kind of maybe doing a self-care check on my community, only because, I mean, it's not lost on me that this film was going to come out in 2025, and knowing what all of you signing right now knows exactly what's happening. Like, we need, like, the difference between now and say in 1968, when times were dark and the civil rights period's over and all of our leaders have been killed and all those things. Artists definitely stepped up to the plate to offer the people something, some sort of hope, glimmer, inspiration, something. Like, you know, for me, the music of my childhood was what got me through, and it was hell. It was hell. But that's what got me through to it. That's what taught me to dream. That's what taught me to be here right now to speak to you. So we're in a place now where we need artistry and clear-minded, an agenda. And, you know, this was, for me, my Hail Mary pass, you know.
Yeah,
I didn't mean for that. It's now 66.
they wouldn't do it if they didn't need it. You know, in the interest of Black history, the thing that D'Angelo gives out, the longevity, how white rock and rollers go out in style, generational wealth passed down to their children. And you know, when he says that, I could not help but think of you at SNL 50 watching McCartney and Paul Simon up there as healthy as they could be given that they're in their 80s, performing, getting to have that last act in the way that so many musicians do not.
Hey, look, the majority of my peers, I mean, that's generally talking about singers, you know. My peers, like, the fact that Flavor Flav has a 6 on the left digit of his age is like one of the happiest things that I can encounter. The fact that both Ice-T and Chuck D can say that they're 60-something. A lot of my peers in hip-hop, you know, back when I was younger, it was like not getting shot in the clubs, like by the time you're 30. Now the new getting shot is, you know, will I get a cardiac arrest by 55, 56? Will I get, you know, will I even make it to 60? So it's even more dire right now in hip hop. I mean, the fact that I once Googled dead rappers, and there's a very elaborate website of 1,300 rappers that have died since 1993. Like, it's so common that it's almost like a shrug, you know? And, I mean, that saddens me. So, just anything that I can do that doesn't come in the name of, you know, no one likes the know-it-all preacher person. But if, you know, we could plant seeds with these projects, that to me is the greater goal.
I'll add to that by saying one of the great joys of this experience of releasing this film is that Sly is still alive. And what the subtext.
Well, that title would be messed up, right?
Right. Like we had a conversation, it's like if for some reason that's not the case, like SLY, even if you wouldn't have been here in physical form, the music and the ideas and the story still lives. But I think the subtext of the film is that like, had SLY passed away of a drug overdose in 1972, would we revere him more than we do because he lived to today? And I think that's, the way black artists are treated in the media, that's kind of one of the ideas in the film, is that, we don't afford the artists that we revere any sort of grace to live their lives. It's the other reason why we never really pushed to interview SLY for this film. It's just like, well, why? Let the man live and be in peace, So,
This movie feels like an invitation or a window into how longevity could happen, like to inspire people to, that this is possible. In fact, you named the movie what you did. And before we go, I have just a couple things. You both have movies coming out. You're both working on movies about other musicians. Quest, you said that your next film, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
There's no pressure there, right?
You said that it cracks the code with everything that I was trying to make with this film. Without spoiling it, what are you getting at there?
In the pandemic, I had a everyone has a pivot life turnaround moment. And my air quote come to Jesus moment was in the pandemic where I would say that maybe before 2020, I would sort of look at metaphysical people kind of with a side eye, with a raised eyebrow. They're wearing Birkenstocks. They're one of those yoga, stretching, meditative people.
You're looking right at me as you say.
and then he did mushrooms.
Yeah, and then I became a person. So Earth, Wind, and Fire, my main question of Earth, Wind, and Fire is how did this band successfully trick a nation of people, a world of people into metaphysical positivity? Like the difference between metaphysics and organized religion, especially the kind of weaponized, imperialized, organized religion that we're kind of seeing. I've always seen all my life, that people are just seeing now, is that, with metaphysics, you're taught that, that God is inside you. God's that you're like one of God's cells. And if you watch The Wizard of Oz, like if you can say it, you can be it. If you speak it out, people say, don't put that out there. Metaphysics is living in am I to I am. Whereas organized religion is more like, asking Santa for a new bike or, I need this promotion, God, please, please, please. Where in the metaphysic world, you have to declare that and be it. But you also have to live in the present, which also means whatever traumatizes you in your past, either your personal or your generational trauma, that can't be, you can't sit and wait to deal with it. You have to you have to live in the present, because if your past traumatizes you, then suddenly your future is you're gonna man-fuck your future. So as a result, I'm gonna try to figure out, okay, see, even then, that's wrong. You can't say I'm gonna try to figure out. My plan is to show people how metaphysics work through the lens of Maurice White of Earth, Wind, and Fire. But he is my dream project.
Before I ask you about that, just to bring it full circle, the movie closes with what song?
Just like a baby.
you hear it now, you feel what?
Relieved that the movie's over.
I hear Case Ross too.
Right, exactly. We also hear the people that own Case Ross try to charge us like 20 times more. So.
Are they here today? No. Joseph, you are making a film about the one and only Jay Dilla. How are you feeling about that? Tell me where you're at.
We just started last week.
Very positive.
Yeah, Ahmir is executive producing that film, so it's not. It is also his dream project.
It is, but I want to be on the sidelines and laugh at him. No.
You know, it's a dream project. I mean, it took 3 years to put together the team and the financing to make it. We're getting it, we got independent finance, so we want to be able to tell the story. That's but it's about Dilla. It's also about time and what we do with the time that we think we have, and the time when we don't have it, or what we do when we don't have any time at all. So I think as people, Ahmir worked with Dilla. Dilla was a guiding light for him. Our story producer on SLY and on Dilla is a guy named Jeff Mao. Jeff was the first person to interview Dilla for Major Magazine. I was the second. Dan Charnas wrote a great book about Jay Dilla. He's the producer on the film, so it's a pretty good interview.
My last question. You mentioned this earlier, but the guilt you feel about enjoying music that comes from pain feels like the thing you're working out or trying to work out in this. And the late Nikki Giovanni wrote a beautiful testimonial for a book called Everything But the Burden, which was written by your mentor, the late Craig Tate, who also passed away in the pandemic. And I thought maybe you could read her words and see where they land with you.
I can't read. No. Yeah. Everything But the Burden looks through both.
Oh, no. One paragraph up. You do everything but
Oh, all of this. Okay.
They're both good.
Okay. For some reason, or maybe for none, I put Marvin Gaye's What's Going On in my car CD and took myself back to the 60s and projected myself with that same music on up to Mars. Whatever else Black Americans have defined in the past, it is our experience with capture, enslavement, emancipation, segregation, and redemption that will celebrate this living and save our souls. We will define the future. It is our willingness to forgive that both perplexes and confounds those who think they can braid their hair or drop their pants and know something about the splendor of being who we are. Everything But the Burden looks through both a telescope and a mirror. The images that reflect and rebound, sure, they take gaze, anguish, and makes a commercial out of it for Radio Shack, just like they took So What You Want a Revolution will tell you to buy Nikes. But we're still here, laughing, still loving, still deciding what looks good and what sounds right. We're still hugging ourselves, still making joyful noise, still finding a way to be human and humane. It is not, after all, the blackness that has caused our loss of vision, making us turn in this tunnel of despair. It is the blackness that is showing us a way out. Thoughts? Damn, I want to make it, you put me on the spot because there's something profound that I want to say about what I just read, but I'm technically not allowed to announce it yet, but no, I can't. I will just say that, Tate's entire canon of writings, like pretty much inspired me. He was the first musician I knew that just waxed poetic on just everything. I didn't know that musicians were smart or could be smart, and kind of he was my guiding light. Getting him in Summer Soul was a dream. His last words to me of him saying like how proud of he, like it was like if you remember the Mean Joe Green Coke commercial, he didn't catch, like that was my moment with tape right after we saw Summer Soul. So even with Vernon sort of taking the reins of wisdom quoting, like everything that Vernon said was, you know, like just Steph Curry from half court, just everything that's going in. You know, it's his words are absolutely, you know, spot on as far as how beautiful our pain is, and like my view of the fact that that's even something that can be absorbed as pain. I never knew that. I always give an example of James Brown's, the 3-minute mark of James Brown's It's a New Day. And he does like this level screaming I've never heard James Brown do before. And I was like, wow, that's not him just hitting a note for a gospel sake or hitting the screen for the sake of the song. Like, that's him. That's him releasing a level of pain that we'll never ever understand. But yet it's disguised as so soulful and so beautiful that I don't think people recognize that as pain. People often say now, like, well, how come singers aren't doing that now? And I know this is a wild take to say, but now that we're kind of in a generation where I'll say that this generation is more numb than feeling. I would like to get out that numb space, but I don't necessarily know if I want to go back to that pain space, you know? So I want to see what's next for Black expression that doesn't have its genesis in generational, kind of a generational burden that you have to carry, epigenetics. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say as we go, telescope and a mirror, as she wrote, I think. And what you two are doing and continue to do, I think is just that. So, Ahmir, Joseph, thank you very much.